Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Enemy vessel spotted, what humans did next changed space warfare forever. The Galactic Confederation sensors detected something unusual near the edge of the RAL sector. A strange object was moving through space, unlike anything they had seen before. Commander Lee stood on the bridge of his ship, the Harmonious Accord, straightening his blue uniform as he prepared to meet whoever, or whatever, was approaching. "Commander, the unknown vessel is traveling below light speed," Officer Kim said, not looking away from the glowing display in front of her. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "Our database has no record of this design." Lee nodded slowly. This was an important moment, first contact with a new species. The Confederation had done this many times before, always peacefully. "They have a system, open all communication channels," he ordered. "Send our standard greeting." The crew worked quickly. The Harmonious Accord began transmitting the carefully designed, signed first contact package, simple math problems, then diagrams showing peaceful intentions. These signals had helped the Confederation welcome 12 different species into their community. There was no reason to think this time would be different. Inside the approaching vessel, a human warship called the Dauntless, the atmosphere was tense. Captain Park stood with his arms crossed, watching the main screen with narrow eyes. "The alien ship is transmitting something," reported his communications officer. "Strange patterns, could be a code." Park frowned. Humanity had only recently ventured beyond their solar system. After centuries of war, the Mars conflict had taught them harsh lessons about trust. When some colony leaders had broadcast peaceful messages, Earth forces had used those signals to locate and destroy them. "What's happening with their energy systems?" Park asked. Lieutenant Choi, his weapons officer, looked up from her station with concern. "Captain, their power levels are increasing, their shields appear to be activating, they're adjusting course to intercept us." Park didn't hesitate. Humanity had survived because they never waited to be attacked. "First, deploy countermeasures," he ordered. "Target their communications and weapons first." The human response was precise and overwhelming. The Dauntless fired specialized electromagnetic pulses designed to disable enemy systems without completely destroying the ship. These were followed by targeted laser strikes at what human scanners identified as potential weapon locations. Commander Lee was thrown to the floor as the first wave hit the Harmonious Accord. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship. "We're losing communications," shouted an officer. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. Lee couldn't understand what was happening. Their scanners had shown no weapons on the approaching ship. They had only activated their greeting protocols and navigation shields. "Standard procedure for first contact, return fire," asked his second in command, helping Lee back to his feet. "No," Lee said firmly. "This must be a misunderstanding. Keep transmitting peace signals, increase power to the translators." But it was too late. The humans, seeing the continued power fluctuations from the alien ship, interpreted this as preparation for another attack. The Dauntless launched a second wave of strikes, this time targeting what they believed were engine and weapon systems. The diplomatic vessel shuddered, emergency force fields activated across multiple decks as the atmosphere vented into space. Medical teams rushed to help the injured crew members while damage control teams fought to keep the ship intact. "We need to retreat," Lee's second-in-command urged, "we're not equipped for combat." Lee nodded sadly. "Engage emergency jump, get us back to Confederation space." The damaged Harmonious Accord limped away, using its remaining power to create a small jump portal before they vanished into safety. Their sensors captured detailed scans of the human vessel, information that would soon reach the Confederation's leadership. On the Dauntless, Captain Park watched the alien ship disappear. "Did they just teleport?" asked Lieutenant Choi, staring at the empty space where the alien vessel had been. "Some kind of jump technology," Park replied. "Beyond anything we have." Send all sensor data back to Earth Command immediately. Park felt uneasy. The alien ship hadn't fought back with any real force either. They were testing human responses, or something else was happening. Either way, humanity needed to prepare. 3 days later, the damaged Harmonious Accord arrived at the Confederation's central station. Commander Lee, still wearing bandages from his injuries, stood before the Council, 12 representatives from the member species. The attack was unprovoked, he explained, while medical images of the injured crew appeared on large screens. We had only initiated standard greeting procedures when they opened fire. The Council members watched in silence as footage from the ship's external cameras played. The human vessel's response seemed calculated and deliberate. "What do we know about these humans?" asked Council Mura, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "Very little," admitted Intelligence Director Ku. "Their ship technology is primitive compared to ours, but their weapons are surprisingly effective. Based on radiation readings, we believe they may have evolved on a high-radiation planet, which could explain their aggressive nature." The Council chamber filled with concerned murmurs. "If they reach Confederation space?" One member began. "If they attacked a diplomatic vessel without provocation," said another. Head Counselor June raised his hand for silence. "In all our history, we have never encountered a species that responded to peaceful contact with immediate violence. These humans represent something new and dangerous." The vote took less than an hour. The decision was unanimous: the humans were to be contained. The Confederation's defense fleet would deploy to ensure this aggressive species couldn't threaten the peace they had maintained for generations. Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Defense Council reviewed Captain Park's report. General H pointed to the energy readings from the alien ship. "The pattern matches weapon charging sequences we've seen before," she noted. "Captain Park acted according to our first contact protocols. When an unknown vessel powers up what appear to be weapons, we don't wait to see their intentions." The Council nodded in agreement. Humanity had learned through centuries of conflict that hesitation often meant destruction. "We need to prepare," said Council President J.W. "If these aliens return, they won't be coming to talk." Neither side understood how completely they had misread the other, the peaceful greeting interpreted as a threat, a defensive shield seen as weapon preparation, and now both civilizations prepared for war, each believing they were protecting themselves from a dangerous aggressor. Admiral Song paced the shining bridge of the Celestial Guardian, the massive flagship of the Confederation fleet, which hummed with activity as officers prepared for what many feared might be the first real conflict in over 300 years. "Display the damage report again, PM," ordered he. His voice calmed despite the gravity of the situation as a three-dimensional image appeared, showing the Harmonious Accord's shattered hull. 23 crew members had died, 47 more were injured. The diplomatic vessel had barely made it back to Confederation space. "I want every captain to understand what we're facing," Song said to the gathered commanders, their faces appearing on screens around the bridge, representing the 50 vessels now assembled. The diplomatic mission was attacked without warning or reason. "These humans show a level of aggression we haven't encountered in thousands of years," the captains nodded solemnly. Most had never fired their weapons outside of training exercises. The Confederation had enjoyed peace for so long that many questioned if a military was even necessary. Now they had their answer. "Our mission is containment, not destruction," Song continued. "We will establish a quarantine zone around human space. They must not be allowed to threaten other peaceful species." Captain Ryu of the cruiser Swift Justice raised her hand. "Admiral, what do we know about human capabilities? Their technology is less advanced than ours in most areas. Their ships are slower, their shields are weaker," he replied, pausing to make sure everyone was paying attention. "But their weapons are surprisingly effective, and they appear to have extensive combat experience. Do not underestimate them." Far away in Earth's orbital command center, General Han stood before the United Earth Command. The circular chamber was silent as the leaders of humanity's military forces reviewed the sensor data from the Dauntless incident. As you can see, Han explained, pointing to energy pattern displays, the alien vessel employed some kind of scanning technology that our systems interpreted as weapons targeting. When Captain Park detected what appeared to be shields activating and the vessel changing course to intercept, he followed first contact protocols. Defense Minister Joe leaned forward. And you're certain the alien ship was preparing to attack? Han hesitated for only a moment. The energy signatures matched those we've seen in previous conflicts. Captain Park made the right call with the information available to him. The council members exchanged glances. Humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had hoped their first encounter with alien life would be peaceful, now it seemed they faced a potential threat from a technologically superior civilization. What are your recommendations? General asked. The council head replied, we need more information, but we must also show strength. I suggest deploying the 7th Fleet to investigate further while our other forces prepare defensive positions around our colonies, Han replied. After a brief discussion, the council reached agreement, the fleet would deploy immediately. Captain Yun of the battleship Resolute will take command of the mission. Captain Yun sat alone in her ready room aboard the Resolute, studying the communications data from the Dauntless incident. Something wasn't making sense. If the alien ship had been preparing to attack, why had they transmitted such complex, structured signals? First, the door chimed and Commander Kong entered carrying a data tablet. Captain, I've been analyzing the alien transmission patterns, she said, placing the tablet on Yun's desk. Something doesn't add up. Yun looked up. What do you mean? Commander Kong pointed to the signal patterns displayed on the screen. These don't match any weapons targeting systems we've ever encountered. They're too complex, too patterned, almost like they're trying to communicate something. Yun frowned, studying the wavelengths. Could it have been a translation attempt? Possibly, Kong nodded. I've been comparing them to known mathematical sequences. There are similarities to how we might try to establish communication with an unknown intelligence. This was troubling information. If the aliens had been attempting peaceful contact, keep this between us for now. Yun said quietly, we need more evidence before bringing this to Fleet Command. The Resolute led the 7th Fleet toward the coordinates where the first contact had occurred. 20 human warships, the best Earth could offer, moved in tight formation. They were under orders to investigate, but avoid conflict if possible. We're approaching the rendezvous point, announced Navigator Men. Sensors are clear, no sign of alien vessels. Captain Yun nodded. Maintain alert status. Deploy sensor drones. Captain, interrupted Tactical Officer Ba. Multiple spatial distortions forming, something's coming. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as ripples appeared in the blackness of space. Then, one by one, Confederation ships emerged from hyperspace, 50 vessels of various sizes arranged in what appeared to be an attack formation. They've surrounded us, came the report. His voice tight, energy readings indicate their weapons are powered and ready. Yun's mind raced. The alien fleet outnumbered them more than 2 to 1, their ships were larger, more advanced. If this was an ambush, the 7th Fleet might not survive. But something about the arrangement bothered her. It didn't look like an attack formation to her experienced eye, more like a standard patrol group spread out to cover maximum sensor range. Could this all be a misunderstanding? The signal patterns Commander Kong had identified suggested the possibility, open a communication channel, she ordered. Captain, their weapons are hot. Bod protested. That's an order. Lieutenant Yun said firmly. All ships, battle stations, but do not fire unless I give the command. Aboard the Celestial Guardian, Admiral Song was equally surprised by the human fleet's sudden appearance. They must have some kind of stealth technology, his sensor officer suggested. They weren't detected until they were practically on top of us. Song studied the human formation. It was tight, disciplined, clearly designed for combat. Had they come seeking revenge for being caught during their attack on the diplomatic vessel? "Sir, the human vessels are charging weapons," reported his tactical officer. Song's hand hovered over the command to engage. The Confederation fleet had the advantage in numbers and technology, they could end this threat now, but the admiral hesitated. The Confederation had never started a war, they had always sought peaceful solutions. "First, open communications," he ordered. "Instead, let's see if they respond to reason." Before either leader could make contact, the two fleets drifted closer, each interpreting the other's movements as threatening. Weapons remained charged, targeting systems locked, as two civilizations stood at the edge of a war based entirely on misunderstanding. The tension between the two fleets grew with each passing moment. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Yun watched as more Confederation ships appeared, their weapons glowing with energy. "They're moving to surround us completely," reported Officer Ba, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "I count 53 alien vessels now." Commander Kong leaned close to Yun's ear. "Captain, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have fired immediately. Something doesn't make sense." Yun nodded slightly, but kept her expression neutral for the crew's benefit. She had been trying to open communications, but either the aliens weren't receiving their signals or were choosing to ignore them. "Their lead vessel is changing position," she announced suddenly. "It's moving to block our retreat path." The massive Confederation flagship, nearly 3 times the size of the Resolute, shifted its position, its design humanized by centuries of warfare. This looked like the classic opening move before an attack, cutting off escape routes. Yun made her decision. "All ships, execute Maneuver Thunder. Target their propulsion systems." Only then did the human fleet burst into action with practiced precision. The ships broke formation, scattering in seemingly random patterns that made them difficult to track. This was a tactic developed during Earth's orbital conflicts, unpredictable movements that confused targeting systems. Admiral Song was still attempting to configure the translator when the human ships suddenly scattered. "What are they doing?" he asked, confused by the chaotic movement. His question was answered seconds later when the first human strikes hit the Confederation's outer ships. Precise energy beams targeted engine sections and weapon placements with surgical accuracy. "They're attacking," shouted his second-in-command. "Return fire," he hesitated for just a moment. This was not how he had wanted things to go, but now he had no choice. "All ships, defensive protocols, disable the human vessels if possible." The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams and missile trails. The Confederation ships had superior firepower, but they quickly discovered something unexpected: the humans fought like no enemy they had ever encountered. "I can't lock on them," reported a frustrated weapons officer. "They keep changing course randomly." Another officer added, "Their targeting is impossibly precise, they're hitting our weak points specifically." Song watched in growing concern as the battle unfolded. The Confederation had the advantage in numbers and raw power, but the humans were fighting with a level of skill that suggested extensive combat experience. They moved together yet independently, adapting to each situation with remarkable speed. 3 Confederation cruisers had already lost propulsion and were floating helplessly. The humans hadn't destroyed any ships outright, they were disabling them systematically. "Sir," called his sensor officer, "the human flagship is approaching us directly on the Resolute." Yun had made a bold decision. While the rest of the human fleet engaged the outer ships, she directed her vessel straight toward the alien flagship. "This is too risky," warned Commander K, "their main ship has enough firepower to destroy us several times over, that's why they won't expect this." Yun replied calmly, "Execute the sunlight maneuver." The Resolute suddenly accelerated to maximum speed, heading directly toward the Celestial Guardian. At the last possible moment, it performed a series of quick, precise movements that no ship of its size should have been capable of. "They're going to ram us," shouted a Confederation officer in panic, but the Resolute didn't ram the flagship. Instead, it executed a perfect roll that brought it alongside the much larger vessel, into the blind spot of its main weapons. From this position, Yun's crew fired precisely targeted shots that disabled the flagship's engines and main weapon systems without breaching its hull. The bridge of the Celestial Guardian shook violently, emergency lights flashed as systems failed across the ship, engine offline, main weapons disabled, reported an officer. Song studied himself against his command chair. How did they get so close without being hit? On another deck of the flagship, Scientist Moon had been monitoring the battle with growing confusion. Unlike the military officers, he had been studying the human attack patterns with a scientist's eye. What he saw didn't match the report of bloodthirsty aggressors. They're deliberately avoiding life support sections, he muttered to himself, analyzing the data. They're disabling, not destroying. A realization struck him: these weren't the actions of an aggressive species intent on conquest, they were defensive tactics, precise and controlled, minimizing casualties. Before he could report his findings, the ship shook again. "They're boarding us," came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Captain Yun led the boarding team herself. The human marines moved through the alien ship in tight formation, weapons ready but set to non-lethal force. They expected resistance, perhaps even traps or ambushes, but what they found instead were confused and frightened crew members who seemed untrained for combat. Many simply raised their hands in surrender when they saw the humans. "They're not even armed," whispered one of the marines to Yun. When they reached the bridge at Adal, Song stood tall, facing them with dignity rather than fear. "If you're going to execute me, human, do it quickly," he said, his words translated by a device one of his officers held. Yun lowered her weapons slightly. "We're not here to execute anyone, we're here to find out why you attacked our diplomatic vessel." Song's expression changed to confusion. "Your diplomatic vessel? Your ship attacked our harmonious accord without provocation." Before Yun could respond, Scientist Moon rushed onto the bridge, pushing past the guards. "Admiral, stop. I've analyzed their attack patterns, they've been deliberately avoiding casualties. These aren't the actions of an aggressive species." He turned to Yun. "And your first ship, was it truly a diplomatic mission, or was it military?" "The Dauntless was a patrol vessel." Yun answered carefully. "Captain Park reported that your ship activated weapons and moved to intercept." Moon's eyes widened. "We activated standard greeting protocols and navigation shields, nothing more." A heavy silence fell over the bridge as both sides began to understand what had happened: a misunderstanding. "All of this from a misunderstanding," Yun said finally. The battle outside had already turned decisively in humanity's favor. Despite being outnumbered, the human ships had disabled more than half the Confederation fleet without destroying a single vessel. Their superior tactics and combat experience had overwhelmed the peaceful Confederation forces, who had little actual battle experience. "Order all ships to cease fire," Song said into his communicator, his voice heavy with regret. "The same to our fleet," Yun added, speaking into her own device, as the fighting stopped. The two leaders looked at each other with new understanding. They weren't facing bloodthirsty enemies, just another civilization trying to protect itself from a perceived threat. "We have much to discuss," Yun said. Song nodded slowly. "And much to learn from each other." In the hours following the battle, human and Confederation teams worked side by side on the damaged flagship. The fighting had stopped, but trust was still fragile between the two species. Captain Yun had ordered her best technical expert, Officer Rio, to help restore the alien chip systems. Ryu sat at a Confederation computer terminal, her fingers moving quickly across the unfamiliar interface. A Confederation technician named Joey watched with cautious interest. "Your computing architecture is beautiful, Ryu," he commented, as she navigated through damaged communication systems much more elegant than theirs. Joey nodded slightly. "Yet your ships outmaneuvered ours easily. How is this possible with inferior tech?" "Not inferior," Ryu corrected without looking up. "Different. Humans have been fighting each other for centuries. We've had to become good at it to survive." As Ryu repaired pathways in the communication system, she noticed something strange in the code. "This doesn't look right," she muttered, focusing on a section of programming. "These translation matrices have been altered by whom?" Commander Asha moved closer to look. Ryu shook her head. "I don't know, but these changes would corrupt any message passing through them." She pointed to specific sections. "See here and here, these would completely change the meaning of certain signal patterns." The discovery was serious enough to report immediately. Within an hour, Captain Yun and Admiral Song stood watching as Ryu demonstrated what she had found. "The original diplomatic signal sent by the Harmonious Accord would have been peaceful," she explained, "but these modifications made them appear as targeting locks to our ships. Similarly," added Jay, "your response would have been interpreted by our systems as an unprovoked attack." Admiral Song's expression darkened. "Are you suggesting sabotage?" "Yes," Rio answered firmly, "and not just once. I found similar modifications throughout your communication systems dating back months." "You look troubled. Who would gain from starting a war between our civilizations?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Scientist Moon had been digging through ancient Confederation archives since the fighting stopped. He entered the room holding a data tablet, his face pale. "I believe I know who might be responsible," he said. The Neru. Song looked confused. "They've been extinct for 1,000 years. Moon placed his tablet on the table, displaying images of an insectoid species with multiple limbs and large compound eyes. The Neru were predators who consumed other sentient species. They were the reason the Confederation formed originally, to stand against their expansion." "You fought a war against them?" "You asked, the longest war in our history," Song answered. "After we defeated them, their remaining ships flooded into uncharted space. They were presumed dead after centuries of no contact." Moon continued, "But look at the code alterations Officer Rio found. They contain signature elements of Neru programming that our historians preserved. It's subtle but unmistakable. The implications are chilling. If the Neru still existed and had been manipulating both humans and the Confederation, we need to establish secure communications." Yun said decisively, "Direct links between our leadership by bypassing the compromised systems." Over the next day, human and Confederation engineers created a new communication system immune to outside interference. For the first time, leaders from both sides could speak without fear of manipulation. In a tense meeting aboard the Celestial Guardian, representatives from both species gathered. Holographic displays showed evidence of the Neru interference. "According to our historical records," explained Moon, "the Neru strategy was always to weaken potential threats by making them fight each other. They would then consume the survivors." "Consume?" asked Commander Kong, looking disturbed. "Literally?" "Yes," Moon replied quietly. "They evolved as predators and viewed other sentient species as prey." The Confederation Council appeared on large screens. Having received the evidence, they looked troubled by this revelation. "Even if this is true," said one council member, "why should we trust humans? Their first instinct was violence." "Our first instinct was self-defense," countered Y, firmly, "just as yours would be. The difference is, we discovered the deception before either side was destroyed." The debate continued for hours. Human military commanders were equally skeptical about trusting aliens with advanced technology, but the evidence of Neru manipulation grew stronger with each system they checked. Finally, the Confederation Council reached a decision. "We propose a temporary alliance," announced the head counselor, "to investigate this threat and neutralize it if necessary." Earth Command agreed. Captain Yun would continue commanding the human forces, working alongside Admiral Song. Their first task was to locate the source of the Neru interference. Technical teams from both species worked day and night tracing communication disruptions and signal anomalies. Officer Ryu and Jay led the effort, combining human ingenuity with Confederation technical knowledge. After 3 days of searching, they made a breakthrough. We've traced the signal source, reported Officer Ray to the command team.